Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Think Before You Hate podcast, where we will discuss the latest topics on civil rights that concern the people of Chicago. I'm Alex Chavez of the Chicago Commission on Human Relations, and we're the city's civil rights agency. We work diligently to eliminate discrimination and prejudice here in the city of Chicago by enforcing the Chicago Human Rights Ordinance as well as the Chicago Fair Housing Ordinance. And today we have the great pleasure of speaking with Daniel Serrano and Norman White, who will educate us on hate crimes here in Chicago. So, gentlemen, welcome. Thank you very much for hopping onto this podcast. And start us off, will the two of you please tell us a little bit about yourselves, let our listeners know about who you are, where you grew up, how you got interested in your current roles?
Well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. Like you said, my name is Norman White. I was born in Costa Rica, but I was raised in both countries. I kind of went back and forth. I come from a very diverse family, so I've become used to navigating through cultures due to the fact that I lived in both countries. I've always had an interest in human rights, public service. It's been a theme throughout my life. I mean, my grandfather, my mother, my dad, my sisters, we've all been involved in public service. We've always had a social conscience. So, this is something that I love to do.
Yourself, Danny?
My name's Danny Serrano, and I was born in Brooklyn, New York, to parents from Puerto Rico. We lived in Brownsville, Brooklyn, which is at that time was a black and brown neighborhood. Eventually made it here to Chicago at the age of 7. Grew up in West Town at a time long before gentrification. And I'm a product of the Chicago public school system. And as a result of having lived through those experiences of living in different diverse neighborhoods, as Norman said, I've been around a lot of diverse communities. That lived experience kind of gave me an interest in figuring out how to help people to get along, because I did definitely experience a lot of the conflict, and I became interested in helping to bring the peace. Later, in my 30s, I eventually went to law school, and I thought when I was doing that I was going to go pull myself up by my bootstraps and make some money. But then when I got out into the work world, I realized that all of that experience growing up in those kinds of communities, tough neighborhoods, low-income neighborhoods, meant that I was really attracted to work where there was social justice involved. And so I did a lot of public interest type of work, public service type jobs, both in New York and here in Chicago. And eventually, when this position opened up at the CCHR, the City Civil Rights Agency, it just felt like a good fit.
Sounds great. Now, would the two of you mind stating your job titles with the CCHR?
Well, I'm the hate crime victim advocate for the city of Chicago.
And I'm the director of intergroup relations and outreach.
Beautiful. Well, thank you. Now, Danny, some of our listeners may not know what a hate crime is. So if you don't mind, can you walk us through what defines a hate crime?
Sure. It sounds deceptively simple, right? A hate crime, it's got two components. The first part is the crime. In the state of Illinois, there's a whole list of things that are classified as crimes, and the elements are spelled out. City of Chicago also has some, and of course on the federal level. What makes a hate crime unique is that first you have to have a freestanding crime, like an assault, a battery, arson, homicide, property damage, a whole range of things. And then the hate crime part comes in, where the motivation for committing that crime against that victim or against that target is the bias that the perpetrator has against that person's real or perceived protected class, whether that's their race, their gender, their sexual orientation, this kind of thing. So when you put those two things together, a freestanding crime that would have been a crime anyway, and the motive is a bias or hatred towards the individual victim, now you have a hate crime. And another thing that distinguishes hate crimes is the fact that it usually serves to enhance penalties.
Sure.
And the reason why courts have upheld the enhancement of penalties in hate crimes is because the hate crime is not only a crime against the individual victim, it's also a crime against the class of people who share that protected class with that victim.
Oh, makes sense. Now, there's a hate crime and something that's called a hate incident. Will you please let our listeners know what a hate incident is?
Sure. Last year, the Chicago City Council amended the hate crimes ordinance and added the concept of a hate incident. And what a hate incident is, similar to a hate crime, you have an incident. That's the first component. But the thing is, it's a non-criminal act. It could be somebody yelling at you when you're walking down the street or even in traffic. But what makes it a hate incident is the motivation of the individual to commit that non-criminal act against you is, again, hatred against that person's race, gender, sexual orientation. So it's similar to a hate crime. You have an act, right? In this case, it's a non-criminal act, and then the motive for that act being hate. The reason why it was added to the city's hate crimes ordinance, according to the sponsor, is that she feels that hate incidents can be precursors to hate crimes. And so if the city is keeping track of hate incidents, where they happen, when they happen, the nature of those hate incidents, they can eventually maybe establish patterns that can help the city in its efforts to intervene and prevent hate crimes from happening. And you can report, if you're a witness or a victim of a hate crime, you can report that to 911. A hate incident, you would report to 311.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for defining the hate crime and a hate incident and establishing a distinction between the two. Now, Norman, you're the agency's hate crime victim advocate. What does that entail?
Well, like it says, I support victims of hate crime. What happens pretty much if somebody calls the police, they feel that they've been a victim of a hate crime, and they describe that to the police on the scene red flag it. Once it's red flagged, it goes into a special unit within the police department called the Civil Rights Unit, and we work very closely with them. Once they get it, they pass it on to the commission. And what we do is we do the victim support. For example, what we do is we track the case all the way from the moment it goes into the court system until there's some sort of resolution. If the victim needs additional support, like if they've been injured or what have you, we have community partners that we can reach out to help support the victim. One of the things that we also do is we let the alderman know that a hate crime has been committed in their ward. And let me just say one thing, that sometimes these court cases can take months or they could take years, and we're on top of it. We go to every court hearing. We keep track of it.
Now, Norman, do you mind sharing with us a specific case that comes to mind that speaks to what you do, perhaps one case of a hate crime and one of a hate incident?
Well, for example, a hate crime that happened probably a couple of years ago was a trans female, Mexican trans female. She was undocumented, and she was assaulted in a particular neighborhood, and the people involved there were gangbangers, and there was an arrest. So what happened in that particular case is this woman was being harassed and was being threatened. Her life was being threatened. Even witnesses were being threatened. So what we ended up doing with the police department, we figured we got to get her out of the neighborhood. So we were able to identify another place where she could stay, where she could live and feel safe. And also, for example, I said that this individual was undocumented, so we were able to identify U visa for her, and she was able to adjust her status. By the way, I mean, the individual that did commit the offense was convicted and did some jail time.
Wow. Okay.
Now, Danny and Norman, will you please explain to our listeners how the CCHR partners with other agencies to carry out its work?
Yes, we partner with a lot of agencies across the city. One of them is CPD. In this regard, we're talking now about hate crimes. When someone reports a hate crime, which hate crimes should always be reported, call 911, report it to CPD. Once CPD begins to investigate the allegations, if they determine that a hate crime has in fact been alleged, they will then forward that file to the Civil Rights Unit of the Chicago Police Department. They're responsible for overseeing all hate crimes investigations. And as part of their process, what they do is they forward that file to Norman, who is our hate crimes victim advocate, so he can begin his part of our work of reaching out to the victim and looking to see if there are other ways in which we can be helpful to them. We also partner with aldermanic offices throughout the city. Alders know who we are, and when they need help in certain areas, they'll reach out to us. The most common is when they'll get a report of a community tension within their ward. This is usually neighbor-to-neighbor based problems, but when the conflict has to do with people's protected classes, you've got folks of different races or different genders or different orientations kind of going at each other in a way which is threatening to escalate and become what's known as a community tension, something that's going to be a danger to the entire community if it gets out of control. They'll reach out to us, and there's a member of our team who is a human rights specialist too. But what that really means is that she is a trained mediator who has a lot of experience and a lot of expertise in reaching out to folks who are having conflict and in a nonpartisan way intervene and try to bring the two parties together to a peaceful resolution so that we can turn the heat down on that community tension. It's important to note, though, even though we work with the police in the hate crimes realm and we work with alders addressing community tensions that could threaten to become dangerous, we are not law enforcement, and some of those community tensions will entail CPD involvement. And again, just to emphasize, our community conflict resolution is based on conflicts that are involving members of different protected classes.
Now, Norman, is there anything that you would like to add?
Yeah, just like to highlight on what Danny said, that we are out there. The community knows who we are, and we will continue to educate and empower the community to report hate.
Now, Danny, will you share with our listeners any new programs and initiatives that we at the CCHR are working on this year?
Yeah, we've got a couple things in the pipeline right now. One of them is a hate crimes pilot, which we are rolling out right now. The purpose of the pilot is to address a problem, which is the underreporting of hate crimes, which everybody who works in this field, it's sort of a conventional wisdom that hate crimes are vastly underreported. And in fact, there is some evidence that you can find if you can find some of it in our hate crimes report, which is available on our website that we did last year. In doing that report, we were able to find that the federal government has a couple of different data sources. One of them is an annual crime survey that they do nationally. And in that survey, they established that there are approximately 250,000 hate crimes that occur annually in the United States. When you look at the FBI's crime data, however, only somewhere between 10 and 12,000 hate crimes are reported annually. So we can see there's a vast gap there. A lot of hate crimes are going unreported. Why is this? There's some speculation about it, but anecdotally, we know that some of the reasons are folks don't know what a hate crime is, what constitutes a hate crime. So they don't recognize it when they see it as a witness or they experience it as a victim. There's also the fact that some communities, and in particular communities that would be targeted for hate crimes, don't have a history of having great community police relations. Okay, there's a lot of distrust of law enforcement out there, and that's one of the things that holds people back. Sometimes we're talking about people who are undocumented, and they may not realize that just because of the fact that they're undocumented, that doesn't mean that they don't have rights, especially in a welcoming city like Chicago. They certainly do. They have the right to be free from discrimination, and they have the right to not be victims of hate crimes. And so they don't know that even if they're undocumented and they report a hate crime to the Chicago Police Department, the police are going to treat that as if any regular John Doe citizen had been a victim in that case, and their immigration status is not relevant. Sometimes there's issues of cultural competency. So the hate crimes pilot program is meant to address this. We are, again, partnering with CPD. This program is not meant to supplant CPD's role in law enforcement, but rather to complement it and to help. It's meant to build trust between CPD and the community. And the way in which we're going about this is CCHR and CPD have partnered with several community-based organizations spread throughout the city geographically, but also spread throughout the city demographically in terms of who the folks that the different nonprofits serve. So, for example, one of our partners is the Chinese American Service League in Chinatown. Another partner is the Urban League. Instituto del Progreso Latino is another partner. We have several others. But the purpose is for us to partner with those nonprofits so that we can start doing outreach specifically to their communities, to the folks who they serve, joining up with them when they do their outreach so that we can engage in educating the public about what hate crimes are, what hate incidents are, and how you can report these. This way we can address the issue of folks not knowing what a hate crime is. That's one part of it. But another part of it is if folks feel like they do now want to report, but they don't quite feel comfortable calling the police to the site where the crime happened or to their home or going to the precinct, they can go to one of these community-based organizations where they already maybe have a relationship, where the organization already has great credibility and trust in the community, and find a safe space and go there and say, you know, I think I was a victim of a hate crime. I'd like to report it to the police. Can I do that here? And the answer will be yes. And staff will then make sure that they're comfortable and go and call the police, and CPD will come to them and take that report. And our hope with this pilot program is that we will be able to address some of those barriers that exist to reporting hate crimes, and hopefully have it be that some hate crimes that otherwise would have gone unreported and unaddressed by law enforcement will then be reported and addressed, and hopefully a measure of justice can be done. So that's one of our initiatives that we have in the pipeline. The other one is, you may have read or heard that our mayor, Brandon Johnson, signed an executive order at the end of last year declaring a state of emergency for the trans community here in Chicago and establishing a trans femicide working group so that we could study, the city could study, in partnership with other city agencies, county agencies, and members of the trans community together in the form of this working group, this task force, study the problem of violence against the trans community and look at it from lots of different angles to figure out what are we doing to address this, what can we do better, how can we keep this community safe, make them safer. And so that was just established, as I said, some months ago, first by the mayor's executive order. Then our city council went ahead and passed an ordinance further cementing the establishment of the working group. CCHR was named essentially as the lead agency to house this effort. And so we've begun having those meetings internally and with our community-based partners who advocate for the trans community. And the next steps will be a series of public meetings so that we can hear from the public as to what their ideas are, as to what city and county government can do to help their community be safe. And so those are two initiatives, the Hate Crimes Pilot Program and the Trans Femicide Working Group that we're looking forward to working on in the coming months and years.
Powerful, important programs this year to continue working and creating a more safe and inclusive Chicago. Now, my last question as we wrap up this conversation, and this is a question that I've been asking every single person in this podcast series, and will continue to do so. Norman and Danny, in your opinion, what can our listeners do in their everyday lives to combat hate and discrimination?
Well, first of all, Chicago is a very diverse city. It's a beautiful city, and we have a lot of diversity here in the city. Chicago is a microcosm of the world. I mean, you can go to any corner of Chicago and you just hear different languages, different cultures. And by me saying that is celebrate other cultures. Show your support for diversity in your community by attending or promoting events run by local block clubs. That's just a Google search away because there's just so much going on. And expose yourself to different people. You know, that's very important. And that's part of education because in the work that I've done, I mean, the fact that I can start out in the Muslim community in the morning and finish my days in the Jewish community, it's made me a better person. It's made me appreciate diversity. Also, we feel that education is very important, and we really would promote teaching your children kindness and how to talk about differences. Get them exposed early because prejudice and hate are learned behaviors. And we also have to act in solidarity with immigrants or other marginalized groups. For victims of hate crimes, sometimes we've had victims of hate crimes where the community rallies against them. Now, having said that, never put yourself in harm's way. Don't do that. If you feel that you need police presence or things can get out of hand or whatever, I tell everybody make your first line of defense to call the police. And like I said, the commission, there's a saying in Spanish that in Costa Rica that says, estamos para servirles, we're here to serve you, you know, and we're here for you. We're here for the community. We are a small agency, but we do have a big heart.
Big impact, too.
Yes, and so I'm going to second everything that Norman said, so I had to follow.
He said everything.
But all of that, I will go back to the 311-911. If you witness or experience a hate incident, report it. If you see something or experience something, report it. Say something, right? So call 311 if you've experienced a hate incident. If you've experienced or witnessed a hate crime, call 911, report it. If you've experienced discrimination, contact us. I know you're going to give the number at the end, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Contact us at CCHR. We're the City Civil Rights Agency. You can file a claim with us for free. That's what you can do in your everyday lives to combat hate and discrimination. But besides that, kind of dovetailing a little bit with what Norman said at the end there about teaching your kids, remember for yourself to extend other people some grace. A lot of times, these things that become acts of discrimination or acts of hate begin with little conflicts that we have with other people where we let the bad thoughts get the best of us, and then where your thoughts go, your actions can follow, right? And so try to extend grace to other people. Be a forgiving person. Lead with your empathy and compassion.
Sure. Amazing answers. I agree with everything. Thank you very much. Now, Norman, Danny, thank you very much for all of your wisdom today and to have this conversation about hate crimes and how both of you serve the city of Chicago. And thank you very much to all of our listeners tuning into our podcast. Remember, if you or anybody you know feels that they've been a victim of discrimination, please do not hesitate to contact the Chicago Commission on Human Relations. We could be contacted at 312-744-4111. Again, that is 312-744-4111. Follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, we're on LinkedIn, Instagram, X, also Blue Sky. And remember, until next time, think before you hate.